Well, hello and welcome to the Super Connector Show, where I'm delighted to be joined by Gavin Bell, who is the ex-founder and CEO of Yatter, which is one of the UK's leading pay-per-click and social ad agencies based in Edinburgh. How are you doing, Gavin?
Doing good, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you. So we're going to talk about how you built and sold your business in 3 years, which is impressive. And a lot of people who follow me and come to our events and watch these and listen to these podcasts, I know they're trying to scale a business with a view to sell it, but they maybe don't have a clear idea how to do that. But before we get into that, I'd just like you to tell us how you actually got started, like how you started out in business before that.
Yeah, well, my journey started off with, well, if we go right back, I sort of had that classic story of when I was 14, selling things, showing the sort of symptoms of entrepreneurship. So I used to go on family holidays and buy all the fake Armani belts and take them home and sell them on eBay. But how I got started in what I'd call proper business was I had a corporate well-being company, or I tried to create a corporate well-being company, which was a business that where I'd put health professionals into corporates, into businesses, and that business totally failed. Like no money, no traction, nothing. So my first entry into business was a total failure. But one thing that business did teach me was, or gave me, was connections with people in the health and fitness space, and through that, I sort of started to realize that a lot of health professionals, we're talking personal trainers, nutritionists, were bad at marketing. And as somebody that grew up using social media all the time, I thought there's maybe an opportunity here for me to go in and help these people. So that's what I did. So around probably 10 years ago now, I set up a social media management business. And that was me going and working with personal trainers to help them try and grow their following on mainly Facebook at the time.
Mhm.
And that slowly then moved away from the health and fitness space into more of a sort of general, broader niche of business, just businesses in general.
Mhm.
And then that slowly moved into the paid advertising world, which came about because one of the clients that I had essentially just said, "Can you help me with this Facebook ads thing?" And this was back in the day, in the good old days of Facebook ads. And I said, "Don't know what I'm doing, but let's give it a shot." And I think more from luck more than anything, that initial campaign went well, and that sort of was me started in the world of paid ads.
Wow. Okay. Very good. So when you go back a bit, when you set up the health and well-being company, how old were you then? Was that like
I would have been
university or?
18. I would have
Right.
been 18. So I moved away. So I grew up in the Shetland Islands, and I moved away at 18, and moved down to Manchester actually because there was a business course down there called the Peter Jones Enterprise Academy. So Peter Jones from Dragon's Den had academies all over England, and I decided to go to the Manchester one. And that was basically a year-long course where you would go with an idea and try set that idea up in the year. So when you were learning about marketing, you were actually marketing a business. And that was the business idea that I took. Actually, in fact, the first business idea that I took down there was um, fitness boot camps for students. And then I quickly realized that students don't have any money. So it wasn't the best idea. And that's when
Mhm.
I then thought, well, maybe fitness boot camps for corporates. And
Mhm.
then I realized down the line that people didn't want to exercise in their suit and tie. So that's why that one failed.
That's why that didn't work. Very good. I remember the Peter Jones. Was it Peter Jones Academy? Is that
Yep.
still going? Yeah, that was quite big at the
Yeah,
time.
I think it's going, but it's changed massively over the years. It's no longer that sort of 1 year course.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Well, I suppose if you're hanging around entrepreneurs and you're going to get the bug, aren't you? You're gonna learn a lot from that. Um, cool. Okay. And then, so when you started out and you were just doing your own, and then so how long were you doing that? Just as a freelancer, self-employed?
So started off the social media management business, really small business, and that was 2000 and I think that was probably 2015. I started doing that properly. I'd maybe a couple of years prior to that, I think I was doing a little bit of part-time work and doing freelancing on the side, and then 2015 was when I went full-time with it, I believe. And then I ran that business until that business took quite a few different twists and turns because I got some clients, got really busy, and then I thought, how can I create a more scalable business? And that then took me into the world of selling courses. So I sold a Facebook ads course. We had membership. I had a membership site, and just prior to then moving into the agency model in Yatter, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, I had like a group coaching program, which was where I would essentially teach people how they can run ads, build funnels, and do all that fun stuff. So that business took quite, although it was the main focus of it was the sort of management piece, it took quite a few different twists and turns from coaching to courses and the membership.
Very good. So I mean, for anyone who's running their own business, they probably dabbled a little bit in pay-per-click or social ads, but it's hard to do, isn't it, if you're not in the thick of it and you're doing it every day or every week, because it changes all the time, and you really need to be on top of it. You can't just dabble at it, even though definitely Facebook and other platforms will encourage you to just dabble and just put a little bit of money in, but it's like gambling, isn't it, really? If you don't know what you're doing, you might as well just chuck that money away. So
Yeah, especially, I mean, that boost button on Facebook is the number of people that still use it, and you are just essentially just chucking your money away. The main thing for paid advertising, the main reason that businesses fail with paid advertising isn't actually because the platform changes all the time, which it does, but it's mainly because the businesses aren't ready for paid advertising.
Yeah.
So they don't have a system in place that, I mean, most businesses don't even track it. They don't even track how the advertising works. But if you want paid advertising to work properly for your business, you need to know, right, how much are we spending? And then how many leads is that generating? What are we doing with those leads? And track it all the way through to revenue. And most businesses, so the most important part of the advertising is what happens after the advertising. And most businesses aren't set up for that.
Yeah. Sorry, we did one of our events on Friday, platform event, and there was good discussion around this sort of thing. And I think there's a lot of people as well who aren't clear on who their target audience is. So they just spray and pray. They're just putting stuff out there, but the more targeted they can be, the better. Is that right? Yeah.
To an extent. So I think it's the platform has changed so that you used to, when you created a campaign, you would have to know exactly who your customer is so that you can then tell Facebook and Instagram exactly who to target. So
Right.
you'd get really specific into things like interests and behaviors online and use those as targeting. Now you don't do that. You actually go broader, but it's still vital to know exactly who your customer is, because now it's the creative that does the targeting.
Right.
So
Okay.
the thing that you say and you show on the text, you go to a broader audience, but you ensure that your ad itself is targeting a specific profile person.
Right. Okay. I didn't know that. That's interesting. And I suppose their tools are getting better. They can read like the copy and the what's on the image. So is it something to do with if the copy is completely irrelevant to what's the
Yeah,
image?
I mean, the algorithm is so strong. So
Uh,
the algorithm is so strong that it will target people based on who they believe is most likely to take the action. And
yeah.
so the brands that are doing best on advertising, they are the ones that are able to create as much creative as possible.
Right.
And all that creative will be, targeting different groups of people. And that can be things like the messaging itself, but also potentially even the actor in the video itself. So if you've got an audience of, let's say your target audience, just for ease, is men, you might want to have young men doing ads, older men doing ads, middle-aged men doing ads, so that the people that are seeing those ads will resonate with the person that's on the creative. So
Yeah.
you'll find now that the most successful brands online or in advertising are the ones that are just able to create masses of creative and put that out there at scale.
Wow. Okay. Wow, it's good. Very, very good. This is useful. We'll probably ask you more tips on this in a moment. But so you started out as a solo freelance consultant, is that right? Solopreneur, whatever you want to call it, self-employed. But then you changed it into a larger business with a team. So
Yep.
when and why did you do that?
So it was sort of around COVID time. I think me and a lot of people, we all were able to take a step back almost to think about what are we actually doing, what are we trying to do, and a lot of businesses had to pivot at that moment. And we certainly had a lot of, or I certainly had a lot of clients at the time that sort of said, right, we want to cut back on our spend because we're closed, people can't come to our business. So quite quickly, I had to sit down and go, right, what are we doing here? And I had a realization that the business that I'd created was all around my personal brand. And I didn't want to be the face of a brand for the rest of my life. I wanted to be able to create a business that I could sell. And I knew that I had to, in order to do that, I had to separate myself from the business that I was building. So around COVID time, so 2021, that's exactly what I did. I sort of stopped all the personal branding stuff that I was doing, the courses, the memberships, the consulting, the coaching, all of that, turned it off and hired a branding agency actually to then go and help me build a brand and a new name, a new face, new design, new everything for this new business, which turned out to be Yatter. And the purpose of that was, like I mentioned, to build a business that was separate from me and I could build it and with the goal of selling it one day. So that was 2021 that we did that.
And you did it in 3 years. So you started it in 2021 and you sold it in 2024. Is that right?
Yep, sold it in October 24.
Well done.
And then I worked with the business until July last year, 25.
Very good. So did you specifically think, right, I'm going to build this to sell it? It wasn't like, oh, maybe it would be nice to sell it, but let's see if we can build the business and then if we can sell it further down the line. But wait, what was it? It was
built specifically to sell.
Right.
And there was two books I think I was probably reading at the time that inspired the work that we did. There was Built to Sell by John Morello. It's a fantastic book. And I was totally captivated by that because when I first set out the second book, before I go into Built to Sell, the second book was the E-Myth, which is about processes and systems. But when I first set up the business, so we're talking 10 years ago, I built it using the framework of Dan Norris's book, The 7-Day Startup, which is basically create the business in 7 days. And I was totally captivated by Dan's story at the time of he built a business called WP Curve and sold it to GoDaddy. But his whole process or methodology or philosophy was productized services, which was essentially treating your business like a SaaS product, even though it's a service business.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was totally captivated by that idea. And I tried to set it up 10 years ago, but ended up not doing it and was freelance, like I mentioned. So everything changed. But then when I created Yatter, I was reading Built to Sell. And one of I was captivated by that book because the story that it tells is of an agency. And it basically walks you through a story of how somebody that owned a design agency was able to design that business so that they could sell it. And one of the things was productizing the service. So I sort of joined the two things and I was like, right, now is the time, whilst we're in COVID and whilst, the world is all over the place, let's start from scratch and do this properly. And so, I went down this process of designing the business to sell from the ground up, and
Mhm.
Built to Sell was a massive inspiration from that.
Love it. Because I'm a big reader. Like I read lots of books, and I always recommend books, and I'm always open to recommendations as well. But I love it when people actually apply what they've read as well. Because definitely the E-Myth, I've heard lots of people talk about that. I've not actually heard of the Built to Sell before, but I think I need to read that one. But that's awesome as well that it was an agency, because I would say pretty much every agency that I've ever met wants to productize what they're doing, but they don't
Yeah.
know how. They're really good at what they do as an agency, but they just don't know how to productize it, and they're very reliant on people.
Yeah.
And they feel like the only way to grow is to win bigger clients or to hire more bodies.
Yeah, I
And
think the problem that a lot of agencies have is they operate from this in this sort of old traditional way of operating. So they will go to do pitches and tenders, and then pitch it based on time, and then manage their team based on time,
Mhm.
which has its place. But I came from I'm not a I came from this sort of naive place of not having ever worked in an agency. So we sort of said at the start, I'm not interested in time tracking. I'm not interested in going for pitches. I'm not interested in doing some of the traditional ways of operating as an agency. We're going to do it this way, a different
Mhm.
way.
Cool.
And I think that's how a lot of businesses end up being disrupted, is because somebody that's naive comes in without any preconception of how things are done
Yeah,
and do it differently.
yeah. Clients probably like that as well. Do you not think? Like clients prefer to know that it's going to be a set price or like a broad range of a price, and they don't think, did you really spend so many hours on this? Or they just want the outcome, don't they? They want you
Yeah.
to deliver the work, deliver the projects, and hopefully deliver the results of
We would
growth,
we would
revenue growth.
we would rarely get asked, well, how long are you going to spend on my account? And actually that question always turned into a great sales point, where we'd say, well, it doesn't really matter how, do you really care how much time we spend on your account if you're achieving the desired outcome, which is
Yeah,
in the advertising world, more money, more profit.
yeah, awesome. So how easy was it to go from just you to Yatter? Was it just you working on your own, and then you had to hire people to work around you or with alongside you in Yatter?
Yeah, so the first hire that I brought in was a salesperson. Actually, I found one of the hardest things about growing the personal brand business was I was so busy doing client work, I was unable to find the time to do sales calls, or
Mhm.
doing too busy doing sales calls, and thus not being able to do the delivery. So I knew that something had to change in the delivery and the sales part. And I don't really like doing sales calls. So I thought, right, well, let's outsource the sales part to somebody who can do it, hopefully do it better than me, and I can just focus my time on the nerdy client delivery part.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. And what that allowed me to then do was it freed up all my time to just focus on delivery. And then actually growing it, despite the fact that I was doing most of these things for the first time, like hiring and firing and all that sort of stuff, growing it actually became quite um what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, I guess process driven, in the fact that first hire came along when I reached a point of capacity again, going, I have no more time to handle clients. So I know that I need to hire somebody to come in and take off some of that workload.
Mhm.
And then what I was able to do quite quickly, and because I'd worked in the advertising world for so long and managing clients for so long, I knew roughly how many clients you could handle as a person before you were over capacity. So that sort of gave us quite a nice guidance. And this goes back to the productization of the service. If the service is the same every single time, everything else becomes a lot more predictable. So I knew that roughly how many clients each person could handle. So because I'd done it myself. And so, hire one comes in. When that person reached a certain number of clients, we brought someone else in, and we essentially just kept doing that.
Yeah, very good. And did you keep the same clients? Did you just move over to the new business, or did some of them go and you had to find some new ones?
Yeah, so we were at that point, like I mentioned, it was so COVID had happened, a lot of clients had dropped off, and then some had come back. So we were starting from a handful of clients, really, probably enough for me, well, for me to manage on its own. And so I operated as the only person in the team at Yatter for a bit of time until we brought in the sales team, and then we were able to start growing properly. I mean, it was at the same time where if you've got a predictable business model, you also need a predictable way of bringing business into that model. So
Yeah.
we launched our own ads. I thought if we are a paid advertising agency, we should really be able to run our own ads to get our own clients.
Mhm.
Um, so everything sort of aligned nicely at that point where we had ads running, bringing clients in or leads in. We had somebody on sales who could then convert those leads, and then I was doing the delivery. And like I mentioned, we were able to then just hire pretty predictably based on the number of clients that first I could handle, and then following employees could handle.
Very good. And were they people in your network already, or like how did you find them, or was it easy or difficult to find them?
Yeah, it was quite funny actually. So the first person that we hired, a guy called Kier, great guy. He had weird story, but he had bought a mirror off of me on Facebook Marketplace, and then when I was hiring, I was looking for people, couldn't find anyone actually, so used a recruitment agency, and they had two people that they brought to me, of which one of them was Kier, and it only sort of at that moment in time did it click that we had met previously
Oh, wow.
on a Facebook Marketplace deal,
Uh,
and yeah, that turned out great.
Very good. Funny how that happens. And because you're based in Edinburgh, is that right? Yatta, based in city centre.
Yeah,
So,
we're actually, so we operated on a hybrid model. So
mhm,
we actually had an office in Dunfermline, and then the Yatter team were based. I'm Kinross. We had a team in Glasgow, Edinburgh, Inverness, and we would all come into the office on a Thursday. But other than our Thursday in office days, we were remote.
very good. And I was going to ask you about the benefits and maybe barriers of being in Scotland.
Yeah, I think the Scotland is a great place, but it certainly has its challenges when it comes for hiring. And I knew that. So this goes back to the built to sell part, which is if you know you're building to sell, every decision you make has to go through the lens or the filter of what would a potential buyer want. And
Mhm.
I knew that we would sell one day to another agency. And that other agency, what are they going to want? Well, they're probably either going to want everybody to come into their office and move into the office, of which it would then be a local agency that buys us, or it would be an agency somewhere in the UK or the world that wants an office in the UK or in Scotland. So I knew that I really had to build a team that were relatively local and thus could come into the office, because I often looked at the model of being able to just outsource all of your ads, either to freelancers or people overseas. That would have been an easier way to grow, cheaper, more scalable. But down the line, it would have been harder to sell because you don't then have that team, that talent as an asset for somebody buying you. So hiring in Scotland meant that the talent pool is obviously vastly reduced. So there's not that many extremely talented paid advertising people in Scotland. They
Mhm.
are there, but they're not many. And if they are there, they're probably already at an agency.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we had to do there's a lot of work that we did to try and attract people and for people to see that Yatter was a great place to come and work. one of the key things for us on doing that was actually TikTok.
Okay.
So we used to make a lot of videos in the office, and we started making those videos initially as ways to try and market the business to find more clients. But we quickly realized that TikTok and the videos that we were making were far more effective as a hiring tool than a client finding tool.
Yeah.
And so I think most people, whenever we put a job advert out there or we approach people for coming to work for us, most people had heard of us or seen us before because of the content that we'd put out.
That's very good. Yeah, I suppose like different channels have different benefits, like more behind the scenes, what it's like to work for Yatter. That's a good use of it. So we were talking before we went live. Were you doing like dances around the office, or did you not? You didn't go that far.
Yeah, maybe not. There wasn't dancing, I don't think, but there was certainly, we used to do the classic, like, what's go around everybody in the team. What's a hot take, or what's your pizza topping, that sort of stuff. Which, of course, in hindsight, when you think back, actually, of course, that makes sense from a hiring standpoint because people are able to see, who would they be working with if they were to join the team, or what sort of culture is there? What does the office look like?
Mm-hmm.
So when people joined the team for the first time and they walk through the door, it's a much more comfortable environment for them because they feel they know the people there already.
Yeah.
So in hindsight, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Uh-huh.
But at the time, it was a byproduct that we hadn't, we hadn't planned for.
Very good. Very good. So you've touched on it a little bit about systems and processes, but like, can you talk a bit more about that? About what you introduced? Anything new?
I could talk about systems and processes all day.
Go on then. Go on.
That's my favorite topic. So I'm not what's the word? Natural process systems guy. I'm probably the opposite. But when I was building the business, I realized if we're productizing it, you need a system behind it because you don't want as an agency or any business, I would argue, you want every single client or customer to have the same consistent journey or process.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did early on was map out what is every single touch point. My background actually in the marketing and advertising worlds, I moved slowly into funnels. I found that was my sort of favorite place, which is what is the journey that somebody takes from an ad to becoming a customer. And what we did with Yatter was basically just take that step further, is what is every step that somebody takes from seeing an ad to becoming a lead, sales call, customer, and then the first 12 months of them being a customer with Yatter. What is every single touch point?
Mm-hmm.
And so I created, essentially mapped that out, and then we created names for each section. So we had the discovery phase, which is where we discover the business. We had the foundations phase where we, get all the tracking and things installed. And then under each phase was essentially a series of tasks or checklist items of things that us as a business need to do to ensure that client gets the same repeatable process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we started off with V1, and by the time of leaving, I can't remember what number we were on, but V20 or something probably. But what we did was every single time we had a challenge or a mistake or a problem or a customer complaint or something that we felt we could have done better, what we did was we actually just went into the process, the system, the checklist, we put in a fix. So again, sort of trying to think of the business more of a SaaS product, a productized service of, okay, we've identified a bug, let's put in a fix. So that would be everything from like an example I like to give is we found that when we put client campaigns live, typically 2 to 3 days later, they would email us and say something like, how come I've got no leads yet? So we identified that as a problem. You don't want customers 2-3 days later complaining that they've not had a result. So what we would do is we then implemented into the system 2 to 3 days after campaigns go live, we contact the customer with an email of what's going on, what to expect, the results so far, and what that means for their business.
Mm-hmm.
And that stopped overnight. Customers emailing us 2 to 3 days after the campaigns go live with a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's essentially how I approached running the business. Was every single part of the customer journey had a checklist item against it with instructions for the account manager or the person on the account to manage. Now, that's extremely useful when somebody joins the team for the first time, because they're able to just go and follow the instructions. But as the team get better and better, they can then start to, put their own spin on it, their own creative element on it. And if they found something that worked, they could then feed that back to us and say, it wasn't just a bug that we're fixing, here's something that we think performed well, and let's actually add it into the process because it's even better. So that's essentially how I approach running the business. And that, I guess that is my process, or my system for processes and systems.
Yeah. Awesome. See, it makes total sense to do that, but I'm thinking, like, because I think I've told you, so our business is mostly me, and I do have a business partner, but I'm probably where you were when you were running your business on your own. I'm doing so much delivery, and I'm the face of the business, and I'm hosting events, and I'm doing marketing, I'm doing a lot, right? So I do need to put some systems and processes in place, and I do have some systems and processes in place, but is it easier to do that when there's other people in the team? Like,
Yeah,
could you have done that when it was just you on your own, or were you just like doing so much, spinning so many plates that you couldn't do that?
Yeah, no, I totally get that, because the last thing you want to be doing when you're busy is to write a system that nobody's going to follow because it's you.
Mm-hmm.
So that starts when you first hire. When you bring that first person in, that's when you should start thinking about systems. Now, I've actually got a little bit of a framework that I created for this, which is ADS. So if you're somebody in your position where it's just you, the first thing you should do is audit. So do a time audit. This is something I did, and I heard so many people say do a time audit, and I always resisted it because it sounded horrible. But when I finally did it, it was actually beneficial, which is essentially just create a list every single day of everything you did. You don't have to do it in 15-minute increments, as some people say, but just every project or task that you did in a day, write it down. And then after a week, 2 weeks, a month, go through that and go, so that's the A, audit. The D is to delegate, do, or delete. So what are the things there that you want to do? That's typically things that you're either really good at or the things that you want to do. What can you delegate? And then what are some of the things there that you just actually don't need to do? They don't move the needle. They're not very important. And there probably is quite a lot of things in there that
there will
can
be.
just be
There'll
deleted.
be loads. There'll be loads of things that I do just because I've done them for years.
Totally.
Because I enjoy them, and they're not actually. There's no benefit to anyone other than I feel like I'm doing something useful.
Yeah. So get rid, delete. But the delegation part is the key. Is like, what are the tasks there that you either don't enjoy but are important, or you're not very good at but are important? And that's the part that you then need to look at delegating.
Yeah.
And that's when the S comes in, which is systems. Creating the systems so that you can essentially download in your brain how you do those things to somebody else that can come in and do them for you.
Right. Okay. I'm gonna adopt this. This is helpful.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's the first step to delegating is really challenging if you're making that first hire because you're worried about added expense, or at least I was. But I remember somebody telling me for the first hire, it's that you're not. Let's say you're making a 24 grand a year hire, so 2 grand a month. Somebody told me, but you're not actually. It's not a 24 grand risk. It's actually a 6 grand risk, because you can get rid of that person after their probation period. And actually, when you break it down to 6 grand or whatever it works out to be risk, most businesses can handle that. But you'll probably always find that you won't need to get rid of that person, because the time that you have saved in those 3 months by delegating the tasks allows you to focus on the things that are more important and move the needle in the business, that you'll probably look back and go, I can't believe I ran it without you.
Okay, right. No, that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, totally. I suppose, do delegate some things, just obvious things like we've got an accountant, so certain things we do to them with them, and do bring people in as and when I need them to deliver the larger events, not the smaller events that we do. Definitely, probably more on the sales side of things, because I like delivering and I like helping people, but I don't necessarily like cold calling or hitting the phones, and I much prefer more warm. So we've already got people who come to our events or fill in surveys or get in touch and say that they need help. So that's much more comfortable speaking to them than outreach.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you don't enjoy doing something like outreach, then you're probably not going to have the best results doing it. So it makes sense to outsource that to somebody else who, one, will save you time, but will, two, also get you the better results.
Really good, really helpful. There's some good comments coming through as well, so we can respond to them. I'm trying to respond to them as we go along, but afterwards we can reply to them as well in the comments underneath. You touched on a little bit about your personal brand. So you already you'd spent a lot of time building your own personal brand online through different channels and doing courses, and so I know you stopped doing that, but was it still useful that you already had that level of, I wasn't going to say not notoriety, but you were already presumably well known in certain circles. So did that help with Yatter?
I don't actually think that having a personal brand had much of an impact on Yatter, because none of the ads that brought people in at the start were of me. And so there probably wasn't a huge amount of people knowing that it was my business. And we didn't get a huge amount of growth from, like me posting on LinkedIn to try and drive customers. So I don't think it necessarily had that big an impact, but I think there was one of the impacts that it did probably have was the fact that I had made so much content and made so much video that if we were making, ads for Yatter, it came naturally to me to be able to go on camera and do a presentation. So I'd mentioned that I tried to separate my personal brand from the business, and I did, but I still would sometimes get involved in filming ads for the business.
Yeah.
But they would be slightly different in that, it's Yatter's profile. Essentially, I'm just an actor on the video. There was no mention of me or Gavin Bell or anything like that. So I think that it's certainly the skill of video and the skills that I learned in building a personal brand, 100% extremely valuable and useful. But the personal brand driving business into Yatter, probably not. One thing I did realize though didn't in the early days, but what was quite funny is if you advertise for long enough, you get what I call the halo effect, which is for a period of time, maybe a year or two into running ads, where my face had consistently been going out. I would go into most networking events, or in most networking events I went to, someone would come up to me and say, "I've seen your ads from, is it Yatter?" And that would start a conversation, of which then that person quite often would come into a customer. So it wasn't just the ad that, ads weren't just converting people, but the ads were making people recognize the brand, my face, and then it took an in-person, touch point for them to finally pull the trigger and become a customer. So that was quite interesting.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. Yeah, it's a happy accident or byproduct of the ads that people don't think of when they're putting stuff out. But if you do keep putting content out, or people keep seeing your face or hearing the name of your company, then yeah, subliminally it's gonna have an effect, isn't it? As long as it's positive. that they're seeing it online or hearing it talked about. Presumably give you a bit of credibility as well when you're talking to certain clients as well, that you'd already had that experience, not just as an agency, but you'd been doing things yourself individually, and you had all this content that you could refer to and show them. And
Yeah, well, the training and the membership site, that essentially became Yatter's training manual for anyone joining the team.
Yep.
But what was really useful was the ability for me, if we had a new client sign up, if they were, for example, in the coaching or membership space, you know, the experience that I could bring, the pain that I had trying to grow those businesses, I could, you know, relay that to the team, which would often mean that we would be able to get up to speed with that business much faster than if I hadn't had it.
Yeah. Very good. Cool. So obviously you've got your systems, your processes, you're building your team, business is going well. How did you find the buyer? How did you go looking for them, or did they come to you, or how did that come about?
Yeah. So was it 23? I get mixed up with the years now. Essentially, I'd reached a point where I knew I wanted to sell the business. I was getting sort of itchy feet. I'd been in the marketing world for 10 or so years and was looking to change. And we like I mentioned, we'd built the business to sell from day one. And I thought, you know what, let's start exploring that now properly. So I hired mergers and acquisitions consultancy called Cactus. They're now called Blue Halo. And they essentially helped me package up the business into a one-pager. And they had contacts of agencies across the world who were interested in acquisitions. So we were able to put together a one-pager, share that with agencies that we knew were relatively interested in buying other agencies. And that resulted in maybe seven or so conversations with agencies, of which we decided to go with one of them, of course.
Very good. And the company that you sold to, are they based in Liverpool? Did I read
Liverpool,
that?
yeah. So Velstar Group, based in Liverpool.
Okay, very good. So do you think that helped that they were sort of northern, that they were in the northwest and you were in Scotland?
Yeah, it was quite a funny story. So the founder of Velstar, Dan, we, again, I call it serendipity or whatever it is, but we didn't know this when we did the deal, but when we started having a conversation with them, Dan said to me, we've actually spoken, Gav, you know, years ago. He had got in touch with me as an SEO guy, looking for a paid advertising guy to help with some of his clients. So go back to the start of the journey, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, he'd emailed me asking for some help. Now, I didn't know this when we went into the deal, but you know, that definitely helped sort of, you know, build a bit of a connection with them. The fact they were in Liverpool absolutely makes a difference. Felt like, I often feel like with the north of England, it's much more accessible than obviously the south of England. And so, you know, it's nice to know that if we're going to be working with somebody or, you know, joining somebody, that it's somebody that feels closer. That was definitely. And then the third thing was just the people that they had in the business, and the culture that they had in the business was very much similar to us. So I could see us becoming a part of their team. I could see, you know, our team becoming friends with their team. Those types of things were really, like, the culture, ensuring the culture was the same was one of the most important things for me, because one, everybody's going to have to work for them, and that includes me as well. And you know, I don't want to be working for somebody that's not going to be a great fit.
Yeah, no, definitely. I know not everyone's the same, but I think, well, you know, through our events, and I've been, before doing the events, I've spent a lot of time in Scotland, and I do think the north of England, particularly the northeast, I think, but maybe the whole of the north, we're closer to Scotland than other parts of the UK. I think there's something about being further north or quite far away from London that unites us. And
Totally.
that's,
Some people say that people from Newcastle is more Scottish than Edinburgh. So
yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, there's definitely. I always feel good when I go up there. I mean, Glasgow as well, but anywhere in Scotland. But whenever I go up to Edinburgh, it's only like an hour and a half on the train, hour and three quarters. Dead easy to get there and back. You can do it in a day. Yeah, I don't know. Like I've been to a lot of events up there and built a decent network, and people seem quite receptive to collaborating and doing business. But often they've just never thought about it before.
yeah, I was saying to you, I was in Newcastle last week, and I couldn't believe how easy it was. I've been to Newcastle a few times from Edinburgh, but I couldn't believe how easy it was to get there and how quickly I was able to get there. And I was able to leave in the morning and get back for dinner with the family.
Yeah,
And I don't think it's promoted enough, or I don't
no,
think people are aware enough that Newcastle is actually extremely accessible to Scotland, to the point that I would even now, if we were looking to hire, I would be looking at Newcastle as in the catchment area. If I'm looking at Inverness in Scotland, then I should be looking at Newcastle as well,
yeah,
and that
yeah.
that then opens up a huge amount of a totally different pool.
Yeah, no, definitely. Especially, well, we'll talk about it now, about what you're working on now, because you have some great universities in the northeast, particularly Newcastle University, from the healthcare medical profession.
Yep.
There's loads of good students that you can maybe tap into, and more experienced professionals as well. So yeah, so do you want to tell us what you're working on now?
Yeah, well, I am keeping it slightly down low at the
Okay,
moment.
right.
I'm quite enjoying the idea of building something, because everything I've built over the last 10 years has been very much in the public eye. I'm quite enjoying building something behind closed doors at the moment.
Yeah, like
Um,
stealth mode. Is it
Stealth
stealth?
mode, yeah. But we're building a B2C healthcare company, and the purpose of that is, I think that the healthcare space is sort of like how I looked at the agency world a few years ago, in that it's quite antiquated, traditional, it's quite frustrating as a customer, and I think it could be better. So I'm going to try and do something in that space. We were actually due to launch 2 weeks ago, of which I would have then been able to talk all about it. But because we're in the healthcare space, we've got to go through a lot of regulatory hoops, quite rightly so. So we're working our way through that at the moment, and hopefully in the coming weeks, I'll be able to share more about what
Fingers
it is.
crossed. Yeah, yeah, no, very exciting. So it's interesting how you started out doing health and well-being, and then now you're going into this. But are you doing it with a family member who is in that world? So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So you're taking all your experience that you've learned from having your own businesses, and then you're merging it with someone else who's in that industry, in that sector. And yeah, I'm sure you'll do really, really well.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Exciting. And other than that, we touched on it before as well. You're keen to do more podcasts, and you're going to start doing a bit more content creation again. You've got
Yeah,
to do that a bit more.
I've been flexing the content muscles again, which I've been really enjoying. And what's really nice about it is I don't have anything to sell.
Yeah.
So I'm able to, or I feel like I'm able to create content in which I want to create. I try and I'm trying to do a lot of reflection actually at the moment on all the things that I've learned over the last 10 years, and all the things that I learned through the Yatter process, and trying to reflect on those, work on them as concepts and principles and ideas. And I don't think there's a better way than content creation than being able to, or being forced to, have an idea, distill it down into something that is then teachable or relevant and concise enough for social media. So, I think there's maybe a book in there. I don't know if and when that will happen, but I think there's a book in all of the things that I've learned over the last few years. And I'm like you, I'm a keen reader. So I often challenge myself to try and create more than I consume. And so I consume a lot of books. And so I'm sort of thinking maybe I should, take my own advice and write my own one.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. Well, even what you've shared today, there's really valuable insights in this. So, if you can distill that and you can share it, it doesn't have to be a book, but in different, it can be, well, like you say, videos, podcasts, and a book online, a digital book, a physical book. Doesn't really matter what format it's in, but you've obviously got a lot of really valuable insights and knowledge to share with people. So don't keep it all in your head. Get it out there. Share it with
That's the
others.
plan.
Yeah, excellent. So, what of the all the different channels that you use or have used? What's your favorite, or what are you focused on now?
Probably the two that I'm most focused on at the moment are LinkedIn and Instagram.
Okay.
I would say I create more for Instagram at the moment, and I've historically always liked Instagram the most because that's where I've always had the most engagement. And
Yeah.
by engagement, I mean not just likes and comments, but conversations with people. And I think that's one of the things I love about content creation is when you put yourself out there into the world, you get strangers getting in touch with you and having interesting conversations, of which those people sometimes then go on and become friends. And it's social media gets a lot of bad rap, rightly so, but there's a lot of good in it as well. And I've met some of my best friends from social. So Instagram's probably where I'm most focused, and then LinkedIn would be a close second.
Okay, no, that's interesting. Yeah, no, but I agree with you. I mean, I've benefited hugely from social media over the years. Built up a great network online and offline. Every business that I've worked for and my own business has benefited hugely from using it for getting messages out, but also learning as well.
Yep.
As a great learning tool and a communication tool, like you say, for conversations or just direct messages from people. It's interesting though that how things do change because I was trying to think, it's over 10 years. I think it was 2012. Yeah, 2012 when I was working for Sage, big software company, and I was hired as their inbound marketing and social media specialist at the time. And there wasn't many people doing content creation for big corporates back then. And HubSpot, they were real proponents of it and swatted up and were using HubSpot and reading their books and everything. But back then, I don't even think Instagram was around. It was, it's crazy.
Yep.
TikTok definitely wasn't there. It was probably Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, maybe. LinkedIn was not really for promoting businesses. It was more like finding jobs.
An online CV. Yeah.
Yeah, and how things evolve and everything's become much more video based and short form content is obviously the thing right now. So as someone, I sound like a proper old git now, but like as someone who's from that older world of like 12, 13 years, having to evolve, and it used to be much more written content and blogs and guides and having to move into more video based content. It's I'm having to relearn. I'm having to get more comfortable on camera.
Yeah. I do think though you probably do. There's two ways of looking at it. There's you've either, you can either be somebody that adapts and you will then benefit from your experience, because I find that generally the human psychology behind marketing never changes. The tactics change. So you can adapt and you can use your experience, or you get the other side, which is people just refuse to change, and they get left behind. But I think if you're somebody that's been in there from the start, then as long as you embrace that change, then you'll have a head start on everybody else.
Yeah, no, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying forcing myself to do more pieces to camera. I mean, I'm much more comfortable doing this sort of thing, like interviewing someone like yourself and teasing out information because I'm interested and you've got lots of valuable things to share. Hosted events, no problem. Being interviewed, no problem. But yeah, still getting used to just talking to the camera and not overthinking the angles or the lighting or what my kids are going to say when the video goes out, because they're my biggest critics. You know, they don't pull any punches.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel when you get interviewed?
Fine. Yeah, totally fine. I think it is more just like, you know, holding the camera, getting the angle, sound, who else is around, but I mentioned before we went live, I've been doing an online course, and following people like James Smith and Ed Lawrence, and they're very good. I like the tips and advice that they give, and they force you to just put stuff out there. And they'll say, look, we're embarrassed by the stuff they used to put out, but the only way to get better is to it's repetitions. It's like going to the gym. It's the more reps you put in, the stronger you'll get. So if you just put one video out and expect it to be a hit, and it doesn't work, do another one, that you're not going to learn from that, are you? So
the embarrassment that you face at the start of creating video is the tax that you've got to pay.
Yeah,
to be good
definitely.
at it.
Well, in a year, well, hopefully before that, I was going to say in a year's time. Let's see where I am with the video.
Yeah,
but,
this is you publicly stating this is
exactly
the start.
Well, thank you, Gavin. Really appreciate it. Really enjoyed that as well. What's the best, apart from Instagram, or mention it? What's the best way for people to follow you and
yeah, well, I'm on all the channels, and the username is the same everywhere, so it's Mr. Gavin Bell.
Mr. Gavin Bell, very good. I like it. Consistency.
So someone had taken the Gavin Bell, so I had to put the Mr. on, and thankfully that was free.
Awesome. Love it. Right, thank you very much, Gavin. All right, really enjoyed that. All the best.
Thank you, Paul.
Cheers. See you.